There we go. All right, we ready to get started? First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. If you don't know me, my name is Dr. Brian Johnson, and I'm new to the area. I've only been in Murwillumbah here for about 4 weeks now, and so I'm just finding my feet. But I've come down, I've owned my own practice in Weston and Brisbane for the last 9 years, and I've been in practice for almost 14 years now. And one of my biggest passions in life is to empower people to take charge of their health. And that's why I do these types of workshops. So if it's okay with you, I might take the liberty to kind of pre-frame the posture class before we actually get into it and start doing the exercises. Is that okay? All right, great. And usually I have a clicker so I don't have to stand and touch the computer, but I'm using it to film tonight. So I'm gonna be a little bit connected here, so I might not be around as much as usual. So I want you to take a minute, and I want you to imagine a life where you're living to be 70, 80, 90 years. I want you to imagine waking up every morning with tons of energy, feeling great, jumping out of bed, spending time with your children, your grandchildren, maybe even your great-grandchildren. I want you to imagine going towards cruise ships instead of nursing homes and living the life of your dreams. And some of us are doing that, but a lot of us are not. And I want to ask you a question. Do you think that that's a life that's possible for you? Do you think it's something that you deserve?
Yeah.
No, that didn't rhyme. Is it something that most people are experiencing now? No. Now imagine that life also not being reliant on drugs, surgeries, unnecessary medical interventions. Some of the tools that I'm going to teach you tonight, but then some that we'll follow up with in upcoming workshops, are going to give you those tools to make that life possible. Because really, every one of you, if you're here, are perfect. You know, the best doctor resides within you. There's a healing force inside, and whenever we remove any interference, your body has the ability to heal as long as you give it what it needs. So that's a big concept that we talk about in chiropractic. So stop for a minute and think about, are you as healthy today as you were 5 years ago? Some of us are. Some of us are healthier.
Can't remember.
I was on the walk 5 years ago.
Oh, wow. But if you're not as healthy now as you were 5 years ago, where are you going to be if you keep doing the same thing in 5 more years? In 10 years? In 20 years? You see, every choice that we make every day regarding our health is like making a deposit into a high-interest bank account or taking money off of a high-interest bank card. So every choice, what you eat, what you think, how you move, all those things are making huge impacts that's eventually going to catch up to you. So let's make some quality deposits. So another question I like to ask people is, what is your greatest asset? What do you value more than anything else on the planet?
Your health.
Your health. Okay? Most of us innately know that that's the answer we should say. But if that's actually true, wouldn't you spend your most time, your most energy, and your most money maintaining that? Do most people actually treat their body like it's their greatest asset?
No.
If we did as a society, we would not be heading in the direction that we're heading right now. Because when you walk around and you look around, I mean, Murwillumbah is actually better than a lot of other cities as far as the health of the local people. But do you feel like people are getting healthier, or are they getting sicker?
Older.
As the generations go on. But bigger. And is big healthy or unhealthy? I mean, like the human frame is designed to have a certain amount of body fat on it. It's designed to have a certain amount of weight. Our joints are not designed to hold 130 kilos. You know, our hearts are not designed to pump around 130 kilo body. We're not designed to always have elevated blood sugar. All of these issues. So if we really believe that health is our greatest asset, and most people will say that, then why are we getting sicker every year as a society?
Getting lazy.
Are we getting lazy?
Eating the wrong foods, the hidden things in foods.
Yeah,
There's so many convenient foods out there
know what's in them.
Yeah, so I guess a lot of it is a bit of complacency, a bit of need for education, but most of us know that would be better off if we were eating an all organic diet, or if we were not eating fast food and those types of things. So there's some kind of a disconnect there. And I think one of the biggest disconnects that we have is not knowing how to measure health. Because how do you actually know if you're healthy or not? Is it, as we say here, is it based on how we look or how we feel? A lot of us will gauge our health on that.
No, not
Because-
really. No,
No?
no. Because sometimes there's things inside you that aren't healthy and you don't know about them.
Without a doubt.
Mm.
And that's a big thing, you know. Can you look great and can you have stage 3 cancer?
Yep.
Happens all the time.
Mm.
Can you feel wonderful and can a guy go out on a golf course and drop dead of a heart attack?
Mm.
Happens all the time.
Mm.
So was that guy healthy before? No, there was something that was not going right in there. So if we really want to talk about true health, I love this definition by the World Health Organization. And what the World Health Organization says is that health is the optimal function. So that's, in my opinion, that's one of the key aspects there. It's the optimal function of your body, mentally, physically, socially, spiritually, and it's not merely the absence of sickness or disease. But is our healthcare designed to cater towards that? Our healthcare system?
No.
No. If it's not broke, don't fix it, right? Quite often, by the time you're expressing some form of symptom, you're already quite far down the path. So one of my biggest goals is to help people take charge before it becomes that, you know, whether it be diet, whether it be mindset, whether it be exercise. You know, before someone who's depressed gets to the point to where they need to be medicated, years before they would have a lot of times been showing symptoms that maybe some form of intervention, counseling, meditation, mindset, diet could have helped with. Same with, by the time you're diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic, you've had elevated blood sugar for years, maybe even decades, that's been damaging your body. Do you know now one of the biggest challenges in our society is dementia and Alzheimer's? And it's coming earlier and earlier and earlier every year. And there's papers being published that are now classifying that as type 3 diabetes or diabetes of the brain from constant chronic elevated blood sugars that actually can start being detected 20 years before it's showing true symptoms. So we want to always look at function. Does anyone know what the top 3 causes of death in Australia are?
Heart attack.
Heart disease?
Stroke.
Cancer.
Cancer.
I think they would probably lump stroke in with some form of heart disease or cardiovascular, but it's heart disease and cancer are 2 of the top. Okay? And every year it kind of swaps back and forth. What's really interesting about these 2 conditions is if you look through the research, somewhere between 70 and 90% of them are lifestyle related. You know, there's definitely genetic factors that make people more predisposed, but our grandparents had the same genetics that we have. Our great-grandparents did. And we weren't seeing women with breast cancer when they were 30. We weren't seeing all these childhood cancers. We weren't seeing all these issues that we have right now. You know, right now we have the sickest adults, the sickest children, the sickest elderly people in the history of mankind. In the history of any species that's ever been on this planet. Yes?
Sorry, what was the third one?
I'm coming back to it.
Okay.
That's by design, actually. It's the it keeps you paying attention. Good job. So, but you know, right now, are we so sick because we don't have enough hospitals? Are we sick because we don't have enough access to medical intervention and medicine? Not in Australia. You'll have a wonderful social healthcare system. Are we sick because people are dying from malnourishment? No. We're sick because people are living incongruent with what their genes require. Does that make sense? So our genes were created or evolved, whatever your belief system is, to have a very specific requirement. And that's what we've had our entire time that we've been on planet Earth. And in the last 3 decades, changed It's really changed in the last couple of 100 years, but in the last 3 decades, in the last decade, astronomical change. Our diet has changed. Most people don't even eat real food. Kids don't exercise very much anymore. We're constantly bombarded with all this negative social media and all these different things. So to get healthy, it actually only requires 3 things. And they're simple, but they're not easy. And it's to eat, move, and think like our ancestors did. Does that make sense? Like we developed in tribal communities, right? So we had very tight-knit support structures. Now we don't. Where my practice was in West End, there were high-rise buildings, one apartment units, you know, for people who live single. And that's so unnatural in our community. We need these social networks. You know, the food is not what we need. The exercise is not what we need. So we need to start layering those things in, and that's making a deposit into our bank account. Does that make sense?
So every time I give him lettuce, he's getting a deposit into the good stuff.
A deposit into the good stuff. So this is the 3rd cause of death, at least in America. And I would assume that it's probably similar in Australia. And it is medical error. And this was published in the British Medical Journal. And what they actually said in this article was that it might even be number 1, but a lot of them go unreported. And the reason this is happening is not because of incompetence by the medical system. It's not because doctors aren't doing what they need to do. It's because the patients aren't taking responsibility for their health. And then they go to the doctor in such a state that they've already got advanced diabetes, they've already got some form of chronic illness that they've had for decades, and they want a magic pill, potion, lotion, or surgery to fix it. So what's happening is then they're being prescribed a medication that allows them to continue to live the lifestyle that caused their condition, and they just get sicker and sicker and sicker, and then eventually something happens in the medical system. So this is an average day in Australia. Think about this. How many people live in Australia? 35 million? Something like that?
24.
20,
25.
25 million.
In Australia?
Yeah, in
Yeah.
Australia. 25 million. So it's not a huge population. There's 342,000 visits to a general practitioner every day. And from that 342,000 visits, there's 742,000 drugs prescribed. Now, are people getting healthier taking drugs? Sometimes they save people's lives, but the people you know who take the most drugs, are they the most healthy or the least healthy?
I would say the least.
The least healthy, absolutely. Because if you're taking a drug, your body not only has to deal with the drug, it has to deal with the side effects. And every
Prolonged
drug has
use
a
of
side effect.
drugs, you know, medical drugs can do more harm than good, especially with dirty guidance.
Yeah, and there's cases where they save lives. Okay, so 100 years ago, the most common causes of death were infection. Antibiotics saved people's lives. You know, it changed the future. But now they're being overprescribed, and they're being prescribed even for conditions that don't respond to antibiotics, like ear infections, which are quite often viral. And then it damages your immune system and has a lot of other issues. So,
Ruins your good gut flora.
yeah. And this is what attracted me to chiropractic, because my undergraduate degree is in biomedical science from Texas A&M University, which is an ultra-conservative medical school in Texas. It's the oldest school in Texas. And as I was going through the program, I thought I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon. But then I met a chiropractor, and what he said literally changed my life overnight. And he said, we're not concerned about the symptoms, we're concerned about the function. Because what controls every organ, every tissue in your body? Your brain does. And your brain does it by communicating through the spinal cord in every nerve that goes out to your body, to your organs, tissues, and cells. And that is how posture relates into this. Because the structure of your spine affects the function of your nervous system. Structure always affects function. So if you have, let's say, your head is jutting straight out like this, it's going to apply pressure to the delicate nerves that come out through the neck, go down the arms, go across the face. So it might be causing headaches. It might be causing tension in the shoulders. It might be causing dizziness, vertigo, or fatigue. If you have a problem in the middle spine, that might start to irritate the nerve that comes out and goes to the stomach, so you might get indigestion or heartburn. That's something that responds quite well to chiropractic sometimes. Now, if you have an irritation that's causing that problem and you just take an antacid, is it fixing the problem? No, the problem stays there and continues to get worse. And then you start to develop problems from the medication because your stomach acid goes down and you're not digesting your food and absorbing it properly. So it makes, in my view, it makes a lot more sense to find, is the function there? And if it's not, then let's restore the function. There was an article that was published in the Journal of Neurology in 2009, and what they actually stated was that as the spine becomes stiff and rigid, okay, and this is what we call subluxations, when the joints aren't moving properly, what happens is it's going to lose inhibition of the sympathetic nervous system. So what that means is you've got your, imagine if a tiger jumped out at you. Okay, that's your fight or flight response, right? You're going to be ready to fight or run. So whenever that happens, that's your sympathetic nervous system. Your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure goes up, your eyes dilate, cholesterol elevates, blood sugar elevates, all these things happen. Now when your spine is rigid and isn't moving, that stays overactivated. So it's appropriate if a tiger jumps out and you need to get out of the way, but if it's that way all the time, it starts to cause disease and problems. Okay? And most of us are chronically stressed anyways. Okay? And so what happens then is that can decrease blood flow to the organs, which can then also cause illness and ischemia in those organs. Now, the great thing about chiropractic is as we restore normal movement to those joints, it stimulates something called proprioception, which is your body's perception of movement. Okay? And as that happens, it actually tones all that down and it restores the balance of the sympathetic nervous system. So this is why a lot of times we see people with elevated blood pressure, the blood pressure will come down once they get adjusted. There's actually published research on that. One way of measuring someone's balance in their nervous system is by measuring something called heart rate variability, which is a way of measuring stress. And so there's a lot of research coming out looking at that as well. So this is one of the areas that I'm most passionate about helping people, and a lot of the exercises that we're going to go through tonight are based around restoring this normal alignment of the spine. So in the neck, there's supposed to be an arc in your neck. That's normal. That's called a lordotic curve, and it's actually even been termed the arc of life. And the reason that's important is because as your brain exits and becomes your spinal cord and comes down, as it goes through the first two bones, it's still the brain stem. And your brain stem controls your heart rate, your respiration, and your blood pressure. Okay? When you have a normal curve like this, it's going to allow the spinal cord to be loose and relaxed. And I've got a picture right here. But if you lose the curve and you start to develop these degenerative changes, it starts to put pressure into the spinal column, into the spinal canal, which then can irritate the spinal cord, and it puts tension onto the spinal cord. So, see the way that's poking in there? It's not supposed to look that way. Okay? But if you get degenerative changes in there, that's what happens. And so that's why I always x-ray the neck and have a look in there. Also, as your head comes forward, it starts to get heavier. It's like holding a bowling ball. You hold a bowling ball like this, you can hold it all day. You hold it like that, it's going to get really heavy, right? And so that's going to create all that tension and pressure up through those areas. And how many kids do we see who look like this now?
We have one with them in our house.
Yeah, with all these video games and these tablets and everything. So if you have one, encourage them to lay on their stomach and prop their head up while they're doing it. Okay? And then encourage them to do these exercises and these stretches. And we've got lots of ways of keeping that head back up over the shoulders. Another question we get is, why do you see babies? We see a lot of children in this practice as soon as they're born. And what they've been able to demonstrate is that there's an 80% occurrence of spinal subluxation during birth. 80%. And that was published by Gutman, a medical doctor. If they need to use vacuums or forceps, it can put between 54 and 63 kilograms of pulling pressure pulling those babies out, which might save their lives, but it can also cause damage to the spine and the nervous system. And this is what talking about with the children. As the head comes forward, it stretches the spinal cord. It can stretch it between 5 and 7 centimeters and produce pathological tension, putting the body in a state of disease. That's a medical doctor who quoted that. So we want to make sure that we take care of this curve. If there's a river, this is the head of the river, and if you get a dam there, you're in trouble. There's also research that was published by Harvard Medical School that showed the major cause of spinal subluxation in infants is childbirth, stressing the need for correction from birth so that irreversible degeneration doesn't occur. What they stated was that nerve system injury through the cervical spine can cause, cervical spine trauma at birth can cause abnormal function, abnormal behavior, and can even lead to SIDS. And this was, again, published. This wasn't some online blog. This is Harvard Medical School. So why does every pediatrician not know this? This should be normal. It should be accepted. And this is the new normal in Australia. This is another reason why I do this. I have 6 children, if you don't know. And whenever I look at their peers, it amazes me at the health of our young people. In Australia, 1 in 4 children are overweight or obese. 1 in 9 have learning disabilities. 1 in 5 have asthma. 1 in 10 have diagnosed ADHD. 1 in 5 have eczema, 1 in 5 have hay fever, 1 in 8 have food allergies. Now we have children that are so reactive to foods that they have to carry EpiPens with them everywhere they go. 1 in 25 have seizures, 1 in 87 have autism, and it's just constantly rising. 1 in 1,000 have diabetes, 1 in 500 have cancer. Overall, 1 in 5 Australian children suffer some form of chronic illness. So something we're doing isn't working. So we need to adopt a different approach. And the way that we're going to do that is a grassroots approach. And that's my philosophy is give people the tools so that they can take it to their house and then they can share it with their house and their family. Because you can't legislate a lot of the changes that need to be made. They can tax cigarettes till the cows come home, but people are still going to buy cigarettes. Same with soda. You can raise the price, they're still going to buy soda. That approach doesn't work. It has to be your children will do what you do. So in order to overcome and prevent this, we just have to know what causes it, and that's what we talked about earlier. It's that incongruency. So we need to think about one of my greatest mentors, his name's Dr. James Chestnut, and he told me when I was a student, he said, every health decision you make, think about it through the paradigm of what does your genes require to express health? What did they evolve for, or what were they created for, and what did our ancestors do? Because they were pretty darn healthy people. As a species, humans are facing our greatest threat in history. That threat is chronic illness. The Black Plague killed 30% of Europe. Right now, chronic illness is killing 80% of the Western world. Pretty startling to think of it that way, isn't it? And it's really a very slow, very expensive death. Our healthcare system is supposed to go bankrupt just with type 2 diabetes and complications alone. So when we start looking at this, I'm going to give you some tools and we're going to work through how to correct it, but a lot of times people say, oh, can you really make the long-term correction? And the answer is yes. And the way we do it is a very specific protocol. It's very similar to putting braces on a child's teeth. And so this is Ella. Ella was 12 years old when she started care. And if you remember, the neck's supposed to curve the wrong direction. She was getting migraine headaches, which is unusual for a 12-year-old. So we put her through a protocol, and in 6 months we were able to restore, she's not actually 15, I had to change her name, but we were able to restore that normal curve. She was a practice member of mine in West End, who's now in university, which is pretty cool. This is Sam. Sam was into mixed martial arts, and he actually didn't have neck pain, he had lower back pain. And every time he would lose some mobility in his neck, his lower back would start hurting. So, the spine works in very interesting ways. And when we looked at him, he had a reverse cervical curve right here. And through doing what we prescribed, we were able to restore that back to normal. And age isn't always a barrier either. David here, he's 58. And if you look on the left, he had a pretty significant curvature in his spine when he started. I think it was about a 12 degree, not a scoliosis, but there was definitely a tilt in the spine. And we were able to restore that almost to normal. So all of this stuff that I've spoke with you about tonight, it's all based around making sure that the primary operating system in your body is your nervous system. So if we can get your nervous system functioning right, then we can start adding in the proper foods. Then we can start looking at the exercises. Then we can talk about meditation and mindset. But if that nervous system isn't firing the way it is, all that other stuff is just other stuff, in my opinion. Okay? So how do we do this? We do what's called a three-legged stool approach. And everyone's seen a three-legged stool, right? If you pull one leg out, does it stand up? No. Okay. So the three-legged stool approach includes specific spinal adjustments with a specific rhythm and frequency. And that's designed to break up scar tissue and also to work with something called neuroplasticity. So you're actually building neural synapses so the body recognizes what normal is. If you ever seen someone whose head's always tilted and they think they're straight? It's not usually because there's something shaped wrong. It's just that's what their body's perception of straight is. And so you actually have to retrain their brain to think this is straight. And that's what a lot of this is. When we see people like this, they've been that way and it's developed over such a long period of time. We have to retrain them to think this is what's normal. Okay? Then we talk about bad habits. What were you doing that actually contributed to or causing that? You know, and sometimes it's just becoming aware. Maybe it's always texting done like this, or maybe it's the way your computer's set up and you need new glasses because you're always squinting, or whatever the case might be. And then we do the exercises, and that's the exercises that we're going to learn tonight. So, with this information, where will you be in 5 years? You know, will you act on this information? Will it's not the end all be all, but some people are already on a health journey. Some people haven't started their health journey yet. What I'd like to offer is I'm here for any of you. If you have questions about diet and nutrition, I run a blog called The Keto Doc. If you have questions about exercises, it's something I'm really passionate about, and we've also got some great resources over at the Red Box. I've been working over there with Guy, who owns it. I don't know if y'all know them, but they run a functional fitness, they run a CrossFit, but they also run a yoga.
One of my neighbours.
What's that?
He's actually one of my neighbours.
Yeah, I spent about 4 weeks getting to know him before I would actually say, okay, he's the guy. But his approach, his philosophy, his programming, he's not trying to go out and kill people. You know, anyone can flog someone as a personal trainer and make them think they want to throw up. But someone who's skilled will actually build those people up rather than just knock them down. And I think that they're very good at that over there. This is my why. This is why I'm here tonight. I should be at home with my kids. But as I said, I have 6 kids. And really, when I look at the health of our society and the world that they're coming into, it scares me a little bit. It scares me a lot. And so I want to improve in any way that I can. That's why I'm recording this tonight. I also work training other doctors on how they can do these things. And as I said before, it's the one-on-one contact that's going to make the change. It's connecting in communities. It's educating people. It's sharing information. Because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And with Dr. Google and Facebook, you know, you can see something that you think is really straight, and then you look at it and it's that paid advertisement for somebody. So that's why we're doing this tonight. So I want to ask you a couple of questions. How long do you think you should take care of your spine and nervous system?
All the time.
Always.
All the time.
If your spine and nervous system is the master control system of your body, always take care of it. If a subluxated spine or a spine that's misalignment is affecting the way that the nervous system is functioning, who should be checked to see if they have subluxation? See if their spine's functioning.
X-ray. Well, somebody that will X-ray you to see what's going on.
Yeah, but who should be checked?
The chiropractor.
The chiropractor's going to do the checking. Everybody should be checked.
Mm.
Everybody should be checked. And when should they get checked? Regularly. Yesterday, you know. Our greatest success is not the 35-year-old ladies who no longer get migraine headaches. It's the 16-year-old kids that never develop them. Or the 10-year-old kids who thrive in school instead of suffer from learning disabilities or different things like that. And it's that's the passionate part. So let's have a look at these exercises. Everybody has their hand up. Everybody has a band, please, TheraBand. All right, so these are some exercises that we've put together that will only take you about 5 minutes to do. Okay, and they're basic, only around spinal hygiene. So this isn't like physical exercise. This is designed to improve your posture and to work very well with the care that we offer in this practice. And it also works well with these things, which is called a dental roll for the neck. And I'll show you how all that works. So,
That'll all come in the car.
I think I can work with that. Might pop in my face. So, all right, so if everyone will stand up. So the first one is what we call a broomstick stretch. And maybe space yourselves out. You can come around here. You can, because you're gonna have your arms up. Okay. So we give you this because you can take it with you and you can do it anywhere. If you're at home and you have a broomstick, or if you're at a gym and you have a broomstick is preferential because it allows you to actually measure and see. So what you're going to do is you're going to hold it pretty wide, depending on your shoulder mobility, but have a good grip on it, and you're just going to come straight over your head and straight behind you.
Your arms have to be straight.
Yes, so it's really important to keep your arms straight. If you can't do it, just go wider. Okay? So the wider you are, the easier it's going to be. The narrower you are, the harder it's going to be. And this is where it's really beneficial to have a broomstick, because the broomstick won't stretch like this. But so you're just going to come straight over the top and through the back. And at first it'll feel a little bit tight. Yeah, and so let it stretch out. Okay? As your shoulders warm up, it's a good one to do in the morning to wake you up. Keep your elbows locked out, because if you're bending, you're not getting the real motion. So as your shoulders warm up, try to come in a little bit closer. If you have shoulder issues, this is actually really good for you to do. Just don't push it too much. Okay, so take it nice and slow. I'll see what you got.
Some injections in there.
If you've just recently had injections, then let it calm down. Okay, but this will help keep you from having to have injections. So you keep them moving. As the joints move and go through a full range of motion, it lubricates them. Okay, and it's going to help stretch a lot of the problems that are going on in there. And there's some, you can deviate it. You can come one arm over and around like this. But it just really helps you. Yeah, you can do that one. Yeah, that's all right. So, does everyone feel pretty comfortable with that one? Yep. The key is keeping your arms straight, okay, and coming through. All right, so the next one is probably our most functional movement, and it's called a squat sit. So in most cultures, humans actually relax in a squatted position. They go to the toilet in a squatted position, they play cards, they do whatever they do. However, we start putting kids into chairs when they're about 4 years old, and they spend 6 hours a day sitting with their hips bent, and they lose the ability to squat. Most adults cannot squat flat-footed. And that's one of the reasons why we start to develop ankle problems, knee problems, and hip problems. In cultures where they squat all the time, they don't have hip replacement surgeries. So what I want you to do, and so there's a couple of different ways to work through this. If you have a good squat, you want to keep your heels flat on the ground, and you can let your back round. You can hold on to the front of your toes. Most people can't do that. Y'all are pretty good, actually. So there's some various different things. So first, if you can't quite get it, go.
Feet flat.
Yep. So if you can't keep your feet flat, go a little wider and point your toes out. That makes it easier. Okay. Another scaling option is to hold on to a wall and to use the wall for stability to sit back in. Yeah, and that's really good. And so what you want to do is you want to accumulate time in the bottom of the squat. Yeah, we got some good movers in here.
Are we actually supposed to hold it in the middle, or just
No, all the way down. Like you're pretty good. Yeah. As you get better, so if you're pretty comfortable like this, then come a little more narrow and a little more narrow. And if you need need to, you can hold on to something. I find holding on to my toes helps. And we're just gonna accumulate some time in the bottom of that squat. And that's really important because as we get older, a lot of times people even have trouble getting up and out of chairs, getting up off the floor, and all of those types of things. That's really good. So you want to work up to where you can hold the bottom for about 2 minutes. Okay? And if you do that, that's going to really maintain flexibility through your hip flexors. It's going to open up your lower spine. You should feel it probably even stretching down through there. And it'll also help with bowel movements as well. And a lot of us have troubles with that. How does everybody feel about that one? Pretty good?
Yep.
Okay, the next one is a seated row. So you've probably seen bodybuilders in the gym doing these big seated rows to get big backs. It's not that. So it's pretty simple. You have a seat. And depending on your hamstring flexibility, if you need to, bend your knees. If you're comfortable, you can just put your legs straight out. Mine's a little bit too small, so it might. So the secret to, I think I got it, but thank you. Okay. So the secret here is you want to engage your abdominal muscles and slightly arch your lower back. So you're not rounding, you're just keeping nice and straight. And then as you pull, imagine that you're pulling with your elbows. You're not pulling like this, you're pulling your elbows behind you. And the secret sauce here is imagine that you've got an orange between your shoulder blades and you're trying to squeeze it exactly like that. So not elbows up, you keep your, shoulders, you keep your shoulders relaxed and you're gonna come straight back. And what this is doing, this is working the muscles that pull your shoulder blades together. And most of us are on computers all day, so we're rounding forward like this, and those muscles back there don't get worked. Well, most of us, okay? Okay. And so where you really want to feel it is right there. Come right back. I'm going to just do one tweak here. I want you to, like that, and then pull your elbows. Can you feel it a little bit different that way? Yeah. And again, you can regulate the tension based on how closely you're gripping this. I want you just, there we go, good. Good. How you feeling back here?
It's nice and spacious.
Yes, good. Good. Can you feel it tight through there?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Very good. I'll tell you what, I'll put that right there if you want to. How you feeling over here? This might make your shoulder a little bit sore as well, but it's good to keep it moving. That's really good. How you doing here, Don? Good, good. All right, what I want you to do is just arch your back a little bit more. Where is it hurting you?
Then the lower part of the back.
So you're getting a little bit of a cramp, so just bend your knees a little bit more. Good. Good. Okay. How you doing right here? Looks good. You got it? Okay, great. Anyone have any questions about that one? Okay, so the next one's called head retraction. And you can do this sitting, standing, however. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna just place it right under the base of your skull. And the secret here again is to have your elbows locked out. If you have your elbows bent, it won't work the same. And what I want you to imagine is that you're protruding your head and then giving yourself the biggest double chin ever. So out, in, out, in. And what we're trying to work is the muscles that hold the head back. So you're gonna put it right here and then in. Takes a little bit of coordination at first. And you don't want too much tension on it. If it's too hard, all right, here's what I want you to do. Just relax. I want you to straighten your arms. So lock your elbows straight up. Straight like that. There we go. Now. That's perfect. Try to keep your elbows locked up. Good. Take a little bit looser grip. And then, yep, and tuck your chin in and get it back. Yep. Takes a little bit of practice to get that movement down. Looking good. Don, how's that? maybe not quite so much tension through it, and just come. Okay, I want you to okay, and then bring your head back towards my hand. Good, and then slide it. So instead of leaning down and up, imagine that your head's gliding on a rail. Yep, just like that, and perfect. Good. That looks really good. Good. How's that feel? Good. Good. You can feel it work. So what I want you to do is take a lighter grip, so come out a little bit longer, and I want you to lock your elbows like that, and then do it that way. Okay, you can come up. You can widen. How's that feel? You're doing great. Pretty good? All right. And when you first start doing this, you'll probably get sore. Okay, because these are muscles that most of us don't use unless you play rugby or something like that.
Discover tomorrow's muscles that you didn't know you had.
All right, so the next one is Cobra Stretch, which is a classic yoga stretch. We just do it slightly different. So what you'll do is you're going to get on your tummy. You'll put your your hands right under your shoulders, and you're going to lift up, but you're not lifting all the way up like this. You're just going to lift up to where, if you needed to, you could move your hands and you'd still stay up. So all the lifting is coming from the muscles in your back. Your hands are just there to support it. Does that make sense? So you're not pushing up, you're lifting up. And again, because everything we do is rounding us forward, bring your hand back by your, and you should feel it getting tight right there. Come up just a little bit more. You feel it right through there? Yeah.
I haven't got one.
Good.
I'm going to go over here.
If you lifted your hands up, would you stay there?
Keep going. Keep going.
No, if you took your hands off the, yeah. Okay, perfect, that's great. What about you? I want you to arch up just a little, oh, perfect, good. Looks like you're doing a push-up. Feel that right there? Yeah. Okay, perfect. Everyone's looking pretty good. Nice and strong. How are you feeling it? Yes. Push up just a little bit, and you should feel it right through here. So I want about 80% of the lift coming from these muscles, and about 20% just from your hands for stability, where you could lift them if you needed to. Yeah, but you can put the hands down to stabilize it. But what we're really trying to do is strengthen these muscles.
And so, Brian, is that like a pulse movement, or do you aim to hold it for
No, well,
30 seconds?
we want you to hold it for about 2 minutes if you can.
Oh, just in that.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
so that's where the hands will come into place.
Okay, so
Yeah.
rest
2
while
seconds
and then you
perhaps?
can't.
Yeah.
And then if you need to put your hands down and steady yourself in that pose, try and hold
Absolutely.
it for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's all right to have your hands down for
Absolutely.
Oh.
Yeah, it's designed to have your hands down. I was just demonstrating because sometimes when I teach people, they're actually pushing like a push up.
So
Yeah.
you keep your head back.
Yeah, it is better if you keep your head back.
So that's a classic
Yeah.
yoga move.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
For holding
I'm
it.
not a yogi, so.
My
But-
nana used to use it.
All right, everybody relax right there. All right. The next one is the classic plank. Most
So that
people.
one there, you don't want us to work off your pelvic area,
No.
I could feel it.
just like you showed us at the start.
Yeah.
Is that where you're supposed to feel it? Cross there?
Yeah. Most people will feel it right through here.
Oh, no, I think.
Okay. So do a little more stabilizing with your hands.
Yeah, well, I was trying to sort of keep my hands off the ground.
Okay.
Too much.
I probably didn't explain it well enough. So you want it about 80% coming from your back and about 20% from the hands.
Okay.
So,
You ready there?
you ready? All right, so the next one is the plank. Most people know what a plank is, but we have 3 different versions depending on what you can do. Because a plank is, you can injure your lower back if you don't have the stability and the strength for it. So the first one is on your knees with your arms straight. So the secret here is you don't want your bum down, you don't want your bum up. You want to be able to keep your spine straight, okay? And that's it, you just hold it like that. And if you can hold that for 2 minutes, then you will go to the next level, which is like the top of a push-up. And if you can hold that one, then you would go to a traditional plank, which is like this. But do not let your bum drop. Do not do this, because you will hurt your lower back and you're not getting the benefit.
And where do you stick your neck though? Like you don't look up.
No, neutral. Just a neutral position. And if you're feeling really frisky, try sucking your belly button into your spine while you do it.
Yeah.
But it's a very functional move. I'm not a big fan of sit-ups. You know, a lot of people say, oh, I want to get in shape, I'm going to do a bunch of sit-ups, and then they hurt their lower back. Whereas this is working the transverse abdominalis, the pelvic floor.
It's basically working on your core, isn't it?
Exactly. It's a pretty good total core exercise.
How do you do the first part of it again?
Yep, so the first one is on your knees. I like to cross my ankles, you don't have to.
This cervical causing problems.
What's that matter?
Putting so much pressure on the knees.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This knee has a habit of popping out of place.
Okay, so do it on soft carpet, do it on grass, do it on a yoga mat. Yeah, yoga mats are much better.
Hey,
All right,
just go right down.
yep, just like, that's great. Just try not to let your pelvis drop a little bit. Perfect, that's good.
I won't be here for 2 minutes. So.
No, that's all right. We all start wherever we are. You know, everybody's at different levels. All right. So the next one is called a chest opener. And again, most of us are like this because we're on computers, we're doing whatever we're doing, we're driving all the time. So what we want to do is open it up. Okay? And so the way that we do the chest opener is you're going to hold your elbows into your side, palms up, let your wrists relax. And you may find that you have a little imbalance here, especially if you're always on a mouse or something like that. And so just let your wrists relax down, and then you're gonna externally rotate. And you may get a cramp. I always get a cramp right in this area when you do it. But the important thing is keeping your elbows in and coming out. If you're doing it like this doesn't work. You gotta keep the elbows in, and this is a weakness I have. Did powerlifting for too many years. And so a really good way to work with it is with your breath. So you take a deep breath, and then you exhale and you relax back in. And this is also really good for calming the nervous system. So if you're feeling a little bit stressed, you can do this. You can take a deep breath, and then exhale. Come back in. And that's something we all need to work on. It's relaxing. Who here does any form of meditation, mindfulness, anything like that?
I try to, but something that my uncle kind of taught me, because I've never had an actual meditation class before.
Yeah.
He's actually my great uncle. He went around the world and learned massages in different cultures.
Oh, how cool.
And he taught me one that he thought would help me when I was like 12.
Yeah.
So I only vaguely remember it, so I try and do what I remember from it.
There is no right or wrong way. You know, it's just being mindful.
Really upset.
Absolutely.
I got depression, so sometimes when I'm feeling really bad,
Yeah.
I do that, and it helps calm me down. It helps me to stop bottling up my emotions.
Absolutely.
That's a big problem with.
Yeah, it's a great thing. And there's a lot of great. Yes.
So how do you do this now?
But
I've
meditation.
got a 15-year-old living in the house right now.
Listen,
Well, what my uncle taught me was to picture yourself in a place where you know that you're going to become. It doesn't have to be a real place. Just picture yourself. I picture myself in the middle of a bush, in a clearing. I can hear the ocean because the ocean keeps me calm, and same with the sound of the wind in the trees and stuff like that. And just don't. People say clear your mind, but that doesn't really work. What you do is you just let the thoughts float through your mind. If you've got to imagine, picture them, say, what I do is I picture a river flowing through that clearing. And I picture leaves in that clearing. Every thought is on a leaf. I picture, if I have a bad thought that goes through my mind, pick it up, acknowledge it, put on a stream going in a different direction. So I acknowledge it, I acknowledge your bad thought, but you don't control my life and let it go. And it might come back, quite often they do,
Doesn't
but
matter.
each time you
Acknowledge
acknowledge
it, there you
it
go.
and let it go, it controls less and less of your life.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And there's a lot of wonderful tools now. There's some apps that guide. One is called Headspace. It's really good. You listen to it and they talk you through it. And you know, it's a learned.
Lifeline's got it.
Yeah, there's just some really good ones in it. It's really, really powerful. All right, let's do the last exercise, what we call the chest
I
lift.
just got a question.
Yes.
In that picture there, you got the girl lying on the floor.
Yeah, that's the picture that our graphic designer put in there. It's not the right
Just
picture.
lifted up.
Yeah. But that's a good way of doing a chest opener, and that's on one of the on a half foam roller, and so you lay on your back and you do the same thing. And those are really powerful as well.
Yep.
So if you have one of those, great exercise.
Does it matter the height of it? Or do we want that
Honestly,
same?
I'm not sure. So that's,
Whatever's comfortable.
yeah.
Not
yeah. You want it to open the chest up and put the. Here's the thing: when your thoracic spine is in a flex state, that's what we call being in a sympathetic dominant state. That means that you're always in a fight or flight response, and whenever you're in extension rate, you're in a relaxation state. So you're always in that parasympathetic, which is where your creativity, all of your educated mind lives. So you want to be open. You don't want to be all closed down.
Yep.
So the last one's what we call the chest lift. And so this one's really powerful, especially if you either spend a lot of time driving or a lot of time in front of a desk, if you're driving caravan. So what you do is imagine that you have a balloon attached to your sternum, okay? And the simple thing is imagine that balloon is lifting your sternum, okay? So a lot of times people say, how do you put someone in proper posture? Well, you can say, bring your head back, bring your shoulders back, do all this. Or you can say, imagine that there's a balloon on your sternum and it's lifting you up. And if you do that, it's going to bring your ear over your shoulders, over your hips, over your ankles. Okay? Now this works equally well when you're driving. So if you imagine that there's that balloon lifting up, you get in your car, do a chest lift, so touch your sternum to become aware of it, imagine that it's lifting up, and then adjust your mirror. And if you're driving and you find that you can't see out of your mirror, don't readjust your mirror, readjust your body. Okay? Same thing with at work. So if you're doing this right, as you extend, you should feel tightness right in this part of your spine. So sternum, and you should roll your shoulders back just a little bit. Good. You feel it tight through there?
Yeah.
Yep. A little bit over exaggerated, but that'll work because it'll still get the muscles tight. You feeling it right through here?
Up a bit higher.
A little bit higher? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just, if you were to exaggerate the movement, it would be like this. Yeah.
So you keep your head straight.
Yeah. So the last thing you want to do is do this. You want that head back up over your shoulders. Yeah. Do you feel it right in there? Yeah.
There used to be an exercise. Yes, if I'm pulling it on your head.
Yeah.
Slightly different though, isn't it?
Yeah, slightly different. The ballerinas would do that a lot.
Yeah.
And what I find with ballerinas, a lot of them develop a very straight spine, so they lose these normal curves. And that's why children that perform ballet have a 70% greater chance of developing scoliosis. Very high rates of scoliosis in ballerinas. Do you guys feel it? Right through there? Cool. Well guys, that is the posture class. I hope that that's something that you can add into your daily lives. If you feel like it would benefit you, if you feel like it would benefit any of your friends or family, we do them every month here. I can also come to workplaces and do them at workplaces. So if you work at a school or something like that, let me know. If you'd like, so who's seen what their neck looks like on X-ray? Great. Who hasn't, I guess would be the answer. If you would like to find out, let us know. We can schedule an appointment for you. We have on-site digital X-ray, so we make sure that we get the right image, and then based on what we see, then we formulate a plan to work around that. So if that's something you want to do, just let Sheree know. We can make sure that we get that booked in for you. Well, thank you so much for coming tonight. I hope that added value, and we'll continue to let you know if we have any other things going on. Great.
And so is this the slot when you say you do a month posture class.
Yep.
Is it now once a month?
Yep.
Same.
Absolutely.
Days.
Yeah. We'll alternate between Tuesdays and Wednesdays because what we find is some people always have something on a Wednesday night, like maybe it's school or sport or something like that, or training.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to book them in. Our next one will be 4 weeks from
Yeah,
yesterday.
no, all good. I think you send a referral to you.
And if you want to know, have you liked us on Facebook?
No, I don't.
You don't do Facebook? Okay.
You're like this thing, you're a Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's really bad, right? But that's a great resource that we use to communicate, and I do a lot of Facebook Live feeds and stuff like that. But how did you find us? How did you find out about it?
Oh, yeah, probably there.
Oh, wonderful.
Just on the corner, you know.
Yeah.
And I saw the question and that's today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Meant to be. Well, welcome to the practice. And so yeah, we'll do this 4 weeks. What's the day 4 weeks from yesterday?
19th.
The 19th.
Sorry, the 18th. It's every Tuesday. Yeah.
We'll do it on
Okay.
September 18th.
I told a lady about it. She was at Little Wen Antiques, and I walked in there and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. She goes, I just saw too. So I told her about this. I thought she'd be here tonight, but
Yeah.
I'll let her know.
You never know. You never know. All right. Thanks again. Have a wonderful night, everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I practice about 8 different techniques. So I guess if you were classified as what's called a holistic care chiropractor. So it's very strong and very big. Yeah, everything from conditioning. So I use
That to get into that.
yes. So there's. Let me just turn this off so it's not continuing. I'll be just 1 second.